I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for coming out tonight. The first item on the agenda, the next item on the agenda is for me to read a proclamation, and that we're going to make a proclamation, and this is concerning suicide. And so I will read this, and then we will award this to somebody that is here to get this. So, the City of Shelton proclamation. Whereas suicide is now the third leading cause of death in Washington State, the third leading cause of death amongst those from the ages of 15 to 24 in Washington State. And in 2013, 20 people committed suicide in Mason County. And whereas in the United States, one person completes suicide every 14 minutes, and the World Health Organization estimates around 1 million people die each year from suicide. And whereas the warning signs of suicide, including talking about suicide, having a preoccupation with death, expressing no hope for the future, giving away prized possessions, unexpected calls to friends or family, saying goodbye, increased social isolation, and increased alcohol or drug abuse. And whereas many suicides can be prevented by talking to those in crisis, expressing concern, and helping those suffering connected with professionals for treatment. If a suicide attempt seems imminent, call a local crisis center such as the Crisis Center of Thurston and Mason counties, dial 911, or take a person to the emergency room. You should also remove any potentially lethal objects from the vicinity and do not under any circumstances leave a suicidal person alone. And whereas it is important that we all work together to reduce the stigma associated with seeking mental health, substance abuse, and suicide prevention services. Now, therefore, we, the Shelton City Commission, do hereby proclaim September 10th, and I'm reading this before September 10th, obviously, 2014, Suicide Prevention and Awareness Day, and call upon the people of the City of Shelton to learn the warning signs of suicide. Help your friends and family that may be showing signs of distress, and help support those in the community whose lives have been touched by suicide. And we will be signing this today, the second day of September 2014. And I'd like to give this proclamation. I guess this is, I'm going to give it to somebody, and I believe is that Gina Weekly? Gina? All right. And I believe you were the one that kind of asked for this and brought this forward, and so...
Actually, my partner, Monica.
Okay,
I'm
all right.
a crisis therapist, so we respond to your suicide calls.
And it was very educational in just reading that, finding out about that. Thank you. Tell her thank you for bringing that forward, and it was our honor to do that. Okay?
Anyone has any questions about what crisis services does to respond, please.
All right. Thank you very much. Next on our agenda would be our weekly commission reports. Commissioner Moore.
I have no scheduled meetings this week. I would like to put a plug in for an event that actually we all attended on Saturday, which was the first ever block party and barbecue cook-off that benefited the host program. And it was a great event. The weather cooperated. It was nice to see the public out supporting the host program. And that's it for me.
Commissioner Olson.
Tomorrow I have a meeting, the state auditor's exit interview with probably Dave and Kathy Byerly, the finance director. That's the only meeting I have this week. The only other thing scheduled, I think, would be that I was challenged to the ice bucket water test And I would propose that Commissioner Moore, who is also challenged, and Jason Dose, perhaps we could all join together on Friday, the hottest day of the week, and fulfill our challenge.
Good idea.
So I'll throw that out there.
Good idea. You should do that.
I think Friday is a good day to do that. And, thank you so much, Dale and Jeff at PMES.
Yes. And the other thing is, I wanted to tie into what Commissioner Moore said about the block party. The weekend before, I have organized an event downtown. It was a first annual World Championship pickleball tournament. And it was very well received, and it ties in with the event over the weekend that I had lots of comments. I got a couple of calls from a couple of prominent business people who are very enthusiastic about these events. And I think that the town is really anxious for things like this to happen, to promote economic development and to promote our downtown. And I think next year there's a possibility of it being, even bigger and better. There was lots of good feedback from it. I had people calling me, congratulating me on it. And I've kind of preliminary spoken with the owners of Smoke and Moe's about, the possibility of combining them, at least to have some sort of a big event like that. I think it goes a long way for the business community. So just wanted to report on that and look forward to next year. That's my report.
Thank you. And I have no scheduled meetings this week other than staff briefings. The first week of the month usually a little slow, and then the second and third weeks we kind of wind things up a little bit. But my comment on the block party is that I was very happy to be part of that experience and extremely happy to be picked as one of the judges. And I had 4 different contestants that I had to choose from, and so obviously I couldn't just eat one small sampling from each one. I had to eat a lot from each one, and so I didn't eat for a few days after that, but it was extremely fun and exciting. It was a good event for downtown Shelton. So that completes our commission reports. Now, we have an opportunity 2 times in all of our meetings for the general public comment period. If anyone would like to speak about something that's not on the agenda, this is the first opportunity. We will have one later in the evening. But we have a number of people that have signed up. So we welcome your comments. It's one of the ways that we get some input from the community about issues. And so I have a number of people that have come to talk tonight. So it's 3-minute time limit per person. And so I'll just go right down the list. And Mr. Davis, Tom Davis, you are up first.
Thank you and good evening, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. Tom Davis, 170 West Bushy Road. I need to turn the conversation back to this suicide proclamation. It's certainly not a happy subject to talk about, but it's a necessary subject. And as it pertains to veterans, it's a critical subject. I'm fairly active here in the veterans community, and it should be of note that 22 veterans commit suicide every day in this country, and that's more veterans that commit suicide than are killed in action. And that's a sad commentary. There's about 103 people who commit suicide in the United States every day, and 22 of them are veterans. So it's disproportionate, almost 25%. And there's a lot of reasons for that, and we certainly won't go into that at this time. But it's worthy to bring to your attention some of the insights that are brought out by the Veterans Administration that I'd just like to read here for a second. It says, but while older veterans saw a slight decrease in suicides, male veterans under 30 saw a 44% increase in the rate of suicides. That's roughly 2 young veterans a day who take their own life, most just a few years after leaving the service. In Mason County, we have a Veterans Mentor Program. We are advocating for a Veterans Court, which I think you will hear more about in the very near future. There are some judges and prosecutors and attorneys coming up from Thurston County. They have had a Veterans Court there in Thurston County since 2009. They'll be on KMAS. They'll be speaking at the Criminal Justice Advisory Committee on the 17th of September. If you can be there, that would be great. It's not only a county problem, of course, it's a city problem, and any support that you care to give to the veterans and to the mentor program and to the Veterans Court would be greatly appreciated by the veterans community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Next is Sandy Tarswell.
Good evening, Mayor Krantz and Commissioner Moore and Commissioner Olson. My name is Sandy Tarswell. Do I give my address too?
Just-
51?
Yeah, address.
51 East Ann Arbor, Shelton. And I wanted to speak tonight. I'm always been fascinated with the way government works. I worked in the polls when we still had polling places. I've worked on voter registration drives. I watch the ballot processing over at the county when we have elections. And so when I heard about these Shelton citizens who wanted to present the Propositions 1 and 2, I thought that would be a very unique opportunity to watch another facet of our community or our government process, our political process. And again, I was over the county watching the signatures getting verified. Appreciate learning all the new stuff. There certainly does seem to be a lot of support for both of these propositions among the Shelton citizens. And I understand there are some time constraints that are in the political process, and so I'm looking forward to watching and learning how this process moves forward. And thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your comments. And next is Pat, and you must be related to Sandy. It's the same last name, so.
We're not sure whether she'll admit that or not.
Oh, I'm sure she will.
Good evening, Commissioners, Mayor. Pat Tarswell, 51 East Ann Arbor, Shelton, Washington. I wanted to speak about these two propositions as well. When I first heard about them, I thought, well, this is really a good thing for the citizens to get involved in. Every elected official in the county, in the state, as far as I know, takes an oath to uphold the Constitution. Well, these propositions fall directly under Article 1, Section 1 of the Washington State Constitution. It says, and I may be paraphrasing, all political power is inherent in the people. Governments derive their just powers from the consent of the governed and are established to protect and maintain individual rights. So the two parts of that go to the various propositions. Proposition number 1 says that any negotiations with public funds should be open to the public. Well, how can the public give their consent if it's hidden from them what's going on? And the second part is individual rights. Our representatives are supposed to protect individual rights. Well, how can it be individual rights when an individual is not allowed to make the choice whether or not they want to join a union? The proposition makes no statement about denying someone's right to join a union, but neither should they be forced to be in a union. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Next is that somebody Rogers, and it's a lady's name, so how about that? I didn't want to, I just left the first name off because then I wouldn't mess it up, so.
Okay.
You want to state your name and address for the record, please?
My name is Laurelyn Rogers. I live at 229 Wyandotte here in Shelton. I've been a resident and a taxpayer of Shelton for over 25 years, and I support both the Proposition 1 and 2. But more importantly, I support the process of citizens' petitions and being able to petition their government. So please respect this right, and we need to bring these propositions to the people for their decision. So I hope they can be in the agenda soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much for keeping your comments short. My goodness. Did we, got a few more? Two more people. Yeah, Diane, good?
I feel the same way. I would just.
Ditto? Boy, that was short. All right, let's go with, it looks like Allison Bowen?
No, I'm gonna hold off.
Oh, next, in about 15, 20 minutes, there'll be another opportunity. All right, that's all that's on my list now. We will have another opportunity later. And, oh, okay, sure. Usually we have to beg people, 3 minutes, your time's up, go back, sit down, we'll see you next week. But with your group, you're keeping it short and simple.
That was very efficient.
Yes.
My name's Glenn Morgan, for the record. I live in Tenino, Washington, but I'm the Property Rights Director and the Grassroots Director for the Freedom Foundation, and I'm honored to have the opportunity, Mayor and Commissioners, to speak with you here today. Mainly, I just wanted to speak about local citizen initiatives in Washington State in general, and to help provide some perspective to this City Commission just on that kind of a trend that's a little disturbing, and mainly I wanted to talk to you about some of those issues here. The local initiative process was integrated into state law during the populist progressive era of actually my grandfather's time here in Washington State, and as citizens became more concerned about their local government and what government was doing. Because of the citizen initiative process, we have things like the Public Records Act, the Open Public Meetings Act. Those are all both public initiatives that were initiated by the people. And I think we can all agree that those are good reforms and necessary reforms in government. The Freedom Foundation's been training and encouraging activists around the state, including the city of Shelton, but all around Washington State, to become more involved in local government. And I think everyone from all political perspectives, right or left, would agree that that's a good thing. And the local initiative process is just one way that citizens can be involved. However, we have noticed a troubling trend of politicians and bureaucrats around the state giving lip service to encouraging citizen involvement, but actively working overtime and as much as possible to stifle that involvement. And that's particularly been true with local citizen initiatives from around the state. And it doesn't matter if it's the city of Renton who attempted to change where the Cedar River Library was, and they fought a local initiative on that process a couple years ago. And they used every legal method possible, despite the fact that when that finally did get to the ballot, it was approved by the citizens of Renton by over 76%. In the city of Sequim, after local citizens passed an initiative in 1996 to have citizens vote on bond debt that was issued for revenue bonds, the city of Sequim spent an amazing amount of legal money to fight that, a 10-year legal battle until they were able to finally get the Supreme Court to overturn it. And in the city of Mukilteo, the city was able to overturn a citizen initiative that was passed by over 70% of the voters there to prevent red light cameras from being there. And there's other examples in Vancouver and Seattle. Now, over and over again, we're seeing a disconcerting trend by local government to stifle citizen activism whenever those citizens do exactly what we're encouraging them to do, which is to get involved and actually make a difference. So I just encourage this council, this city commission, that just to allow these initiatives to go to the ballot, let the people decide. The city of SeaTac allowed their $15 an hour minimum wage initiative, whether you agree with it or not. They did not stand in the way of that initiative process. And it's actually the only example I've been able to find in the state of Washington where a local initiative wasn't actively opposed by government. But I just encourage you to follow their lead and let citizens have a chance to be heard on this issue. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your time. And your name and address for the record. You said your name. What was your address?
Yes. So Glenn Morgan, and I live in Tenino, Washington.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, big and exciting town of Tenino.
Tenino.
Yeah.
All right, and then next is Scott.
My name is Scott Roberts. I'm with the Freedom Foundation from Olympia, Washington. Thank you for your time, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Commissioners. And I just want to talk to you a little bit about the law as it relates to the local initiatives. And really the amazing thing about the commission form of government is it was the original form of government, but they automatically conferred the power of initiative and referendum to their citizens. You didn't have to adopt it. You automatically got it when you formed your city. And being the only commission form of city left in the state of Washington, this law is specifically written just for you. It only applies 100% here in the city of Shelton. And I don't expect you to have read all 3 pages of that section of law yet, but you can print it out. It's still alive and well on the website. But what it does, it lays out the process on what the commission needs to do once signatures are certified. And indeed, the signatures have come to the city and they've been certified by your county auditor. And you have 20 days from that day to act. So they were certified on August 22nd, which means on September 11th, by my calculations, if I counted 20 days forward correctly, the commission needs to do one of two things by law. And there's only two options. You can do one or the other. There's two options in the law. The first option is you can adopt the ordinances as they are written without modification directly into your code. That would be fantastic. That would save the taxpayers the hassle of having to actually vote on these, since these citizens have already brought these ideas. But your second alternative, the second choice, is to put them onto the ballot. Now you may ask, what ballot do they go on? But that is also spelled out in this very same RCW. And what it says is, from the day that the signatures are certified, if it's more than 45 days away from the next election, it goes on that election. But if it's within 90 days of the general election, it definitely goes on the general election. And so if you're in that window of 45 to 90 days, then you go on to the general election ballot. Now those dates are as follows. November 4th is the general election ballot. September 20th is 45 days away. And August 5th is 90 days. So if you're between August 5th and September 20th, you would then go on the general election ballot. It says right here in the law. And it so happens that those signatures were certified in that window. So there's two options, either adopt them directly or send them to the general election ballot. And I'm looking forward to tracking and following this as it goes along. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your comments. All right. Well, we have been thinking about this. We've been brought before us, and we are analyzing it, and our city administrator probably has a partial answer for you. So,
at this point, our geez, can we just? All right, are we okay? All right.
Better than we were.
At this point, our city attorney has looked into this. There are apparently conflicts within state law. There is also the schedule that we have set for ourselves is to hear public comment on the 15th of September. Excuse me, the 16th of September, which is the next regularly scheduled evening meeting of the commission.
It is the 15th.
Is it the 15th? I'm sorry. It was, anyway, it's in 2 weeks. The other, we've scheduled the first regular meeting in October for a decision. I've not heard the 20-day thing. We know that we cannot get it to the county in order to be able to put it on the general election ballot based on what the county is telling us now. Regardless of what it says in that provision, they're telling us that they won't do it and can't do it. So it's going to be an interesting couple of weeks, I think, in order to, or maybe another week, where we can resolve that. But that's what we're hearing from our attorney and from the county at this point. So that's the schedule, unless we hear something different.
I did, what I did is when I knew that this was coming around, I did talk to our city administrator, and I said, whatever we do, we want to make sure we follow the law, and we do everything according to the schedule that we need to follow. I immediately called the county, and they informed me that we could not, had enough time to get it on the November ballot. Now, this is what I heard, this is what's going on, and whether something's written here and there, I'm not a lawyer, I'm just a cowboy. So I'm for the people, I'm all for whatever, if the people put forward initiatives, we want to follow the law and the intent of the law and do our part to represent the people of Shelton. That's what we want to do. So we will, feel this out, but I did get word from the county that it could not be on the November. Now, if that's not true, then somebody that talked to me, the mayor, they said something that was not true. But that's where we are, that's what we've got in our schedule, and so any other future comments can be directed to us. All right. Yes, did you want to?
May I ask a question?
If you come to the mic, Pat, I will give you a 30-second rebuttal. I just invented that. That's a brand new rule, I know, 30 seconds.
It's not a rebuttal, it was just a question. Okay. Is it appropriate to contact the city attorney to ask questions of him?
No, I don't think so.
That
But you
was-
can talk to the county and see why they told me November 4th they couldn't do it. Okay.
It wasn't a rebuttal, just.
Very good, no problem. Thank you for your comments, we appreciate
I
that.
have a question. What do your name tags say? I can't see that far.
There are various to supporting Proposition 1, supporting Proposition 2.
Oh, okay.
All right, thank you very much for that comments. Okay, next on our agenda, we'll be moving forward with, we're going to recess out of our regular meeting now, and we're opening up a public hearing. And this public hearing is going to be presented to us, this briefing, by Jason Doze, our senior planner.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the commission. Tonight, we are here to convene a public hearing to consider what I consider some minor zoning changes. And why are we bringing these to you this evening? In late 2013, early 2014, the Community Development Director and I, Steve and I, held a series of what we billed as downtown forums, primarily to talk about a few uses in specific areas of the downtown, namely the Mel Auto facility, which also houses CFM Auto Body, as well as the Ritz Burger, which is, they're all on the same block right along First Street by Grove, east of 2nd. And we kind of opened the dialogue there, looked at different parts of the downtown, and we received a lot of input. I mean, a lot of input about everything from some of the problems we're experiencing with homelessness throughout the community, lack of parking in the downtown, or the overabundance of parking in the downtown, depending on who you talk to. These specific zoning items we referenced, and I just want to make clear, this doesn't address any of the visioning items that would be forthcoming should we proceed with the Chamber of Commerce and Forterra Group and do the downtown visioning. This simply was meant to address some of the very specific land use issues we identified, which surprisingly, if you look at our code as written, Mel Chevrolet, which has been a staple of the downtown until they closed, 5 years ago, 4 years ago, is a legal non-conforming use in that location where they had resided forever. Same with CFM Auto Body, and same with the Ritz Burger. So this was a point of concern for us because these were all very well-established businesses. They're appropriate for their environment given the high intensity of traffic along First Street. And essentially, 3 of the proposed changes that are before you this evening address some of the concerns we heard at that meeting. One is to allow for some auto-oriented uses, including reconditioning, painting, sales, and service within that confined area, basically east of 2nd Street, south of Grove Street, where Mel Chevrolet is, where the Ritz Burger is, where CFM Auto Body are. Allow those to be considered with a conditional use permit, where currently they're not allowed. And it doesn't mean the uses have to go away, but where it does pose some issues is if the use wants to change or if the use wants to expand. And we thought it might be a good idea to allow for a potential expansion of these businesses in the future. One of the amendments would allow for eating and drinking places with drive-throughs only on parcels that front on First Street. So this includes the Ritz, this includes Dairy Queen, and really any downtown or commercial residential valley zone property that fronts just on First Street. And the reason being, again, it's a state highway. It's not as pedestrian friendly as many of the other areas of the downtown or the areas that are zoned commercial residential valley. And really, we wanted to have an opportunity for people to take advantage of that traffic, have maybe a little more auto-oriented uses, which are allowed, coincidentally, right across the street. If you go directly east of the general commercial zone, all of these uses are allowed. They're not allowed on that other side of the street, because they're either in the CRV or the downtown zone. Last one that would impact the downtown, which is, and the only reason I'm concentrating on that right now is because that's how this was originally billed, as downtown zoning amendments, and I'll get to the reason for the added ones that we're proposing, is to allow for residential uses above commercial uses outright in the downtown. Staff's opinion is this has always been allowed, but there's currently a discrepancy between the use table and the written text of the downtown zone. The downtown zone would have you say you can do residential above commercial outright. The table that we're hoping to amend says you need a conditional use permit. In our opinion, residential uses above commercial go hand in hand with downtown zones. It makes sense to allow it outright and clear up the discrepancy. The other 5 proposed changes are primarily clarifications. 2 are actual changes that we're proposing, but number 1 deals with the NR zone. We have something that's called a neighborhood commercial zoning district that you can apply, I won't bore you with the details, to parcels of a certain size within our neighborhood residential zone to allow for some lighter commercial and retail uses. But what I noticed when going through the table is that the footnote that's referenced at the bottom of the table that tells you kind of the code section and the process you have to go through is only referenced on the very first use that allows for the neighborhood commercial use. So one of our proposed changes is to add that footnote to every single neighborhood commercial notation in that zone. And that's purely a clarification. I think that was just missed or taken out inadvertently at some point when we were doing some code changes. Another one would be to allow for machine and welding shops to be considered within the general commercial zone. Reason for this is currently they're only allowed within our industrial zones, which frankly we have a lack of right now, and they're basically full. We do have an existing machine shop down on Front Street in a general commercial zone. They have looked in the past to expand, which is somewhat problematic because it's not allowed in the zone right now. And we were contacted by another shop that wanted to open within the recent past, and quite frankly, we didn't have the land for them. And so what we're proposing is that machine and welding shops be allowed to be considered with a use permit rather than not allowed in the zone, because quite frankly, those types of uses fit with many of the other allowed uses in the zone. Those include, auto shops, repair facilities for appliances, these sorts of things. And, we were just trying to clear up a few items we found in the code that make sense, as it were. I won't bore you with the specifics of this one because it might take a while to explain, but it is in the staff report and it is in the ordinance. But we're proposing to amend footnotes 3, 4, 5, and 10 because if you read the current language in the code, they all have an odd reference that basically refers you to note 2, which refers specifically to duplexes and triplexes, which have nothing to do with what the notes are intended to say. So I pulled verbiage straight out of the zoning text for those zones and applied it to those footnotes for the use they apply to, if that makes sense. And you can ask questions all you want if you're confused about that at all. We wanted to clarify footnote number 2 to better reflect the actual language that's in the code. This footnote 2, as I just said, refers to duplexes and triplexes in the neighborhood residential zone. And we also wanted to amend the table to allow for retail lumber yard uses to be considered in the general commercial zone with a use permit. Currently, they're not allowed. And when you're thinking about it, if something like a retail lumber facility wanted to come in, how would we classify that? Is it retail? Is it a lumber yard? It would take some, discussion and thinking about it, putting our heads together, trying to figure out if we could even allow it. This seems to clear it up. It would also allow for pro-build, which currently exists in the zone, to continue and expand should they see fit. And that's really it. We are hoping to take input, if any, and if the commission feels it appropriate, we're requesting a first reading of the ordinance. amended ordinance. I erroneously put Shelton Municipal Code twice in the title of the ordinance, and Leslie so astutely included me into that. She will be reading an amended title to the ordinance if we do the first reading this evening.
All right, well, we have an opportunity for any public testimony concerning this specific subject because we are now in a public hearing. If there's anybody who would like to speak about this specific issue, subject, this is the opportunity to do that. We do have your name and address for the record.
Pat Tarswell, 51 East Ann Arbor, Shelton. I haven't read the ordinance, but the one comment I would like to make is to make sure that the individual business owners are protected going forward. Because, for example, Ritz Burgers, if they get locked into a situation and this conditional permit is not transferable to another owner, if he had health issues, if he tried to sell, would the value of his business be severely detrimental, injured? Just my concern is the individuals. We need to make sure we take care of those going forward. Thank you.
And that, all questions are directed to us, and then we'll direct staff if we need a comment on it. I think it's a good question, and so, could you want to answer that now?
Certainly, excellent question. Conditional use permits run with the land are transferable. I mean, so owner to owner, unless the use is changed, it wouldn't have any impact on the conditional aspect. And in fact, applying it really would change nothing on the ground right now. If the owner wants to proceed as is indefinitely, no harm, no foul, they can continue to do that as they see fit. They can transfer the property, transfer ownership of the business, no problem.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, we have somebody else like to speak about this issue. And Wendy, come on forward.
Wendy Irvin, 5230 Arcadia Road. Basically, it's an extension of what Pat said. I would just like for the business person to have an assurance that the conditional use permit at least had a guaranteed life instead of just, and we could jerk it a year from now or two. You cannot make a business plan if you cannot count on the real property that you sit on being there.
Thank you very much. All right, and then I had Pat, he has written down. Anybody else like to speak about this subject? Yes.
Do you have a letter that was asked that just read into the record?
You'll have to use a different mic if you read it.
Okay. And this letter came in, and I'll just read it verbatim. Dear City Commission, unfortunately, we're unable to attend the Commission meeting tonight, September 2nd, 2014. However, we would like to provide comment for the record pertaining to the adjustments to the permitted and conditional land use ordinance for downtown. As building and business owners in downtown, we are very pleased with the approach Mr. Goins and Mr. Dose took with addressing an issue and arriving at a great solution. They worked really hard from the start to involve the people and businesses affected by this ordinance change. So much, in fact, they started communicating with the businesses long before coming up with a plan or idea. After 3 public open houses, they arrived at a very simple solution that might not have came about without the help of the public. Their concerns for the community also helped clarify some misconceptions that some citizens had arrived with at the public meetings. The best and most effective means of notifying the businesses was definitely the letter delivered door to door by themselves and a couple other city staff members. We have to remind the city that not everyone reads the paper, listens to the radio, or constantly visits the city's website for public notices. Many business owners in this small town are very busy with the day-to-day operations of their business and don't always slow down to search for public notices. Once again, we greatly appreciate the level of courtesy to the businesses the planning department has taken with this ordinance adjustment and fully support the proposed change. Keep up the good work, Steve and Jason. And this comes in from Amy and Forrest Cooper from Cooper Studios.
Okay, any other public comment concerning this issue?
What was the issue
this issue. We're talking about a zoning change for downtown. That's what that letter was pertaining.
Yes.
And so now we have our opportunity as commissioners to speak about this. If you had anything to add, or so.
I just think you did a really good job. I appreciate the work that was done. I think it really clarified a number of issues, and the conditional use permits will enable adjacent property owners to have input to any changes of use. So I think it's a good job. Thank you.
And I would just agree with that. It's a perfect example of reacting to a need that's an obvious no-brainer, to fix down there. So I think you guys did a great job. It makes sense. So I support it.
Yeah, I think it needed to be done because I was excited to see a car parked in mill shelves. I drove by and saw an old car parked in that spot, and the chance that would be eliminated from our future, which has been with us for a long past, I think that's a positive and a good part of the change here. I would say that I want to make sure, though, that if the Ritz Burger or if Dairy Queen sold their business, that the new people taking ownership would not have to go through a conditional use.
Correct.
Correct.
Only when there's any change or intensification.
Change of business, like if they wanted to put in a totally different business.
That'd be fine. I mean, within the bounds of the code, sorry.
Okay?
I took the mic before he was done, I think.
That's all right, he speaks loud.
The term for this is the conditional use permit process allows an activity to occur subject to conditions. Those conditions ride with the property. So if a business owner sells a business, the person that occupies that business keeps those rights, subject to working within the conditions that are allowed. That permit can be revoked if later the next business owner decides not to manage that business in the manner that the permit stated they would. Otherwise, yes, it rides with the property and they can continue to utilize it.
All right, any other questions or comments for staff? Hearing none, I will close this public hearing and return to our regular meeting. I believe that we concur that this is a positive change for the city of Shelton, and that we would at this point ask for first reading of ordinance number 1859-0914.
Ordinance number 1859-0914, first reading. An ordinance of the City of Shelton, Washington, amending Shelton Municipal Code, Chapter 20.06, specifically relating to Table 20.06.030B, permitted and conditional land uses.